So it's Monday, and I want to discuss the top 5 most interesting geopolitical and geoeconomic events that took place over the last week. So number 1 was the Arab-China Business Conference. Now, this conference had over 2,000 business executives, investors from the Greater China area flocking to Riyadh, and they ultimately signed a myriad of deals totaling over 10 billion USD investments. But ultimately, the main importance of this event that it just shows the increasing significance of ties between Beijing and Riyadh. Now, Beijing, given all the geopolitical tensions with not only Washington, but to a lesser extent Brussels and other countries in the West, they are seeking to find alternative fundraising and market expansion opportunities for their firms. So Saudi Arabia is a very compelling argument, particularly with Crown Prince MBS's Saudi Vision 2030 plan, as the Crown Prince realizes that Saudi Arabia desperately needs to diversify its economy, which has historically just been tied to petrol products, which, as you know, increasingly in the coming decades will become less and less important globally. And they realize if they want to be in a decent position in the future that they need to diversify. So Saudi is looking for investments, and China is looking for places to invest and expand. So it's a pretty good match, but it also goes to show how Riyadh is trying to pivot away from its historical synergies and alignment pretty much squarely with Washington, which has been, there's many causes for this, not disincluding the whole 2019 Abqaiq attacks where Iran, they shot some missiles into the Abqaiq oil facility, which really caused Saudi Arabia to question America's commitment to its maintaining its securities. Now, number 2, interesting thing that happened. So Pirelli, it's a big Italian tire firm, right? Well, it's majority owned by ChemChina, which is owned by the Chinese government, the CCP. So Rome came out and made a ruling that ChemChina, they're going to have some restrictions. So they're not going to be able to determine the new CEO. The CCP isn't going to be able to make dictates to the Milanese tire firm. They're only going to be able to pick out X amount of people on the board. So they severely restricted the rights deemed to the shares that ChemChina has as a firm. Third, Tinubu. So Tinubu, the new president of Nigeria, he is at it again. He sacked and I believe potentially arrested the head of the anti-graft and corruption regime. He installed a new head of the central bank, and he also allowed the currency to crash, which has been artificially propped up for quite some time, which is draining the central bank of a lot of its foreign currency reserves. And investors are pretty ecstatic that Tinubu is making all these measures, which I've also included, for example, unifying the multiple exchange rates, which have allowed certain businesses and industries to get cash at a much cheaper rate than the overall market, but then led to arbitrage opportunities where they could make a hefty profit, which angered many people for a myriad of reasons, as it caused many inefficiencies. So investors are definitely looking at this to see, potentially this could be great for Nigeria going forward if they're able to keep these changes, but that has yet to be seen, as politically this could be difficult to keep up over the long run, as it could cause some pain within the general population. Fourth, Micron, the big semiconductor firm that China essentially banned a lot of entities within the country from buying their semiconductors. Well, they're doubling down the Chinese market and said that they're going to invest 603 million USD in their factory in Xi'an. And in fact, they want to hire another 400 to 500 Chinese employees at the factory as well. So they're not deterred from the Chinese market due to the recent geopolitical spat. And so it's going to be interesting in the long run to see if this is going to pay off for them, or this is going to be just a giant waste of their monetary resources and just a failed investment. And lastly, and not terribly surprising, but Putin signed a legislative order to enable Western assets to be appropriated by the state at a significant discount. Now, this measure was seen to be able to punish Western countries from seizing seizing Russian assets, which are many in the West that are gunning up and revving up to do so. And overall, this measure just really underscores the necessity for businesses to acutely monitor the geopolitical and country-specific risks, particularly when dealing with authoritarian regimes that could undermine or just blatantly disregard the rule of law. And ignorance of these risks is a gamble that could prove catastrophic to business, particularly these Western firms that are still engaging in Russia, and that could get all of their assets seized.